My next trick is not mine at all. It's yours.
My body carries sadness that...
Hey everyone, welcome back to Last Few Spins. My name is Joey, and as you can see, today we'll be talking about Halsey. More specifically, our discussion will be centered around her willingness to open up about her illness through the scope of her fifth studio album, The Great Impersonator, released on October 25th of 2024. She describes this album as one that was created in the space between life and death. Throughout this video, we will be taking a deeper look into the meaning of that statement and much more. The origin of Halsey's music career can be traced back to the early 2010s as she gained popularity through the promotion of her talents within the social media and YouTube sphere. After being signed to a label, the release of Halsey's debut album, Badlands, in 2015 would propel her to the next level, going double platinum off the strength of singles such as Colors and Gasoline. The follow-up album, 2017's Hopeless Fountain Kingdom, embraced a mainstream sound that would begin to solidify her place within the ranks of the top female pop stars of the era. Manic would then be released in 2020, becoming her best-selling album worldwide with the single Without Me, sitting atop Billboard's Top 100 for 2 separate weeks. At just 26 years old, Halsey had achieved more chart success in just a few short years than most artists in that vein would see their whole career. Perhaps the stress of always having to outperform the last work would lead to the change of direction that we would see in 2021's If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power, as she drifted away from the type of sound that had been an almost predictable formula of success as she embraced a darker, more industrial sound. Despite abandoning the type of pop that fans had been used to, this album still performed well and was generally received well by critics. Amidst the timeline we just discussed, Halsey had been diagnosed with several illnesses, continuously being bombarded with more symptoms in which her body had been fighting her with. In June of 2024, Halsey announced that she had been diagnosed with lupus and T-cell disorder, and shortly afterwards we started to see teasers of her next project that would give us more insight into her journey. On Instagram, The Great Impersonator was announced with subsequent daily posts highlighting an artist or historical figure that inspired each of the 18 tracks. We would see some incredibly detailed recreations of iconic photographs taken by the likes of Dolly Parton, Stevie Nicks, Tori Amos, Fiona Apple, among many more. Throughout the listening of this album, we would eventually understand more about how Halsey would lean on each inspiration during the writing of this album, perhaps in a way to deal with her medical issues. It's impossible not to hear the opening of the third track, Dog Years, and not immediately get the sense that it is a tip of the cap to PJ Harvey. In Halsey's own words on the day of release for The Great Impersonator, she would share with her 31 million followers on Instagram her appreciation to her fans, but also somewhat of a formal invitation to experience the album themselves with the following caption. I hope once you listen, you will find that behind this theatrical facade is a record I made in a time of grave existential bewilderment. The album is sad, this is true. It's frenzied and calm all at once somehow. To have it in the world with the knowledge of all that I learned while I was making it is a profound feeling. I have so many people to thank in the coming days, but first I would like to thank you all for the overwhelming support you have shown it already. It is an honor to witness it. Through that whole rollout of the album, it's refreshing to see an artist put that much extra thought into including her fans in the process. Day by day, her fans would be anxiously awaiting to see what the next look would reveal about this album, and amongst the comments of each post, you would see a variety of freakouts over how excited it made them. To back up the promotion of the album, the material itself is breathtaking. While the vibes within the music are diverse from track to track, we also see a consistent lyrical theme throughout that ties it all together and gives us the impression of it being one cohesive piece, despite it being cloaked under so many different artists, genres, and even decades. The influences stretch all the way back to the 1970s and find their way forward until the most recent one, which is ironically channeling herself within the 15th track, Hurt Feelings. Instead of utilizing someone that she grew up listening to, this track follows the lead of her Badlands persona of 2015. Not sure if this is her intention, but to me, this feels like a way for her to believe in her own artistic ability amidst so many other instances where she is reaching out her hands for help from the likes of Kate Bush, Linda Ronstadt, and even Bruce Springsteen, to name a few more. Digging into the lyrical theme more, we see a transition from someone who is hopeless in the face of dying from her illness,
Singing, please God, I don't wanna be sick, and I don't wanna hurt, so get it over with quick.
to symbolism of dying from a broken heart.
There from the start, trying to love you through an open wound, 'cause everything I put inside there just
All the way to having everything she should ever want, but still feeling empty inside.
this ain't in my life. And why do these tears come at night?
Now, why I believe some of these themes connect with even the average person is because, with Halsey's example of drawing her own stories out of despair, it enables us to connect our own dots within her music and lyrics as well. The Great Impersonator is a collection of tracks that tells us it's alright to not be alright, and it prompts the listener to embrace that about themselves, because sometimes unpacking the things we aren't comfortable sharing is healthy for us.
Hoping that someone comes around and helps me figure it out.
I'm sure as she was writing this album, she learned many things about herself and her feelings as she faced an uncertain future regarding her health. I personally think it's an endearing artistic endeavor that everyone should really sit with deeply at least once. Unfortunately, not everyone feels that way. The internet's busiest music nerd, Fantano, released his reaction to the album that seemed focused on tearing down nearly every aspect of Halsey's approach to this material, referring to her as having main character syndrome. I think we can all agree that it's not uncommon for an artist to lean into what they know and to focus on the pain and trauma that they themselves have endured. I mean, if we're being totally honest, that's when art shines, is when it's made in despair. I'm sure she didn't want to be dealt an illness that left her in a dark mental state, but she took the cards that she was dealt and channeled the emotions from it into a work of art that she can document as a major chapter in her life. Another point that Fantano tried to make in his review was that Halsey ends up not sounding anything like the artist that she is trying to impersonate. The major point that he is missing is that this material isn't about recreating those voices or artists in a perfectly realistic way, but it's more about how her real-life persona had been impersonating the Halsey artist persona throughout her life, and now she's reflecting on it through who she grew up listening to. With this being said, it's not like I'm a Halsey superfan that needs to defend her, but I couldn't make this video without pointing out some of those glaring inconsistencies from that review after watching it. To close my thoughts on how I feel about The Great Impersonator by Halsey, I'd just like to acknowledge the artistic growth that we have seen from her throughout her 5 albums. While much of the early stuff is catchy, full of hooks, and is certainly produced well, the artistic density and quality of her work just keeps maturing as she herself matures and lives her life. Many artists in her position fizzle out after that kind of initial attention and fame, as they can never replicate what they have done before, but they still try to do the same thing over and over until it's too late and nobody cares what they have to say. It seems like Halsey was ahead of that curve and made that artistic change of direction in plenty of time, and while going through her health struggles, she hits the nail on the head with her latest release. Despite being cloaked under the symbolism of impersonation, this album feels like it is full of honesty, and it's certainly one of the most genuine embraces of someone's own mortality that I've ever witnessed within an album. I want to thank you all for tuning in to watch this video. I have many more artists and topics that I'd love to cover in this format coming up, so to make sure you don't miss any of those, please subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time.